it's Candice from the book. Today I'm going to be reviewing and chatting about Leviathan by Scott Westerfeld. Feld? I don't know. So I've never read anything by Scott Westerfeld before, nor have I ever read anything that falls under the steampunk genre before, so this was a really interesting read for me. It's 2 firsts in 1, which is really cool. So I'm going to start off with a non-spoiler section just to talk about my thoughts, and then I'm going to discuss it with you guys. So if you haven't read the book, just stay for the review section. If you have read it, please stay tuned for the discussion, or you can just skip through the review and just go to the discussion. So let's do this. And also too, if I'm looking down a lot, it's because I'm reading my notes and my laptop's in front of me. This novel is the first book in the Leviathan trilogy by Scott Westerfeld, and it's a steampunk novel. So steampunk is classified as a subgenre of science fiction that typically features steam-powered machinery and are often set in alternative history of the 19th century's British Victorian era or American Wild West. Well, at least according to Wikipedia, that's what it is. I really have no clue. So moving right on to characters, this novel utilizes a third-person omniscient narrator and focuses on the lives of our 2 protagonists, which is Durin, I don't really know, Sharp, and Prince Alec. As the characters are members of 2 rivaling countries in a war, the chapters alternate from following Alec to following Durin in order to show both sides of the war and really put a new spin on the idea of enemies and allies. Durin Sharp is a commoner who loves to fly and dreams of being a successful pilot. As a girl, she's not allowed to be in the military, but she refuses to allow what sex she was born in to determine what she wants to be in the future, and if she wants to be a pilot, she damn well will be a pilot. And I really liked that about her character. She wasn't going to take no for an answer. And I really liked that her brother helped her enlist in the military. That showed that he was a great brother, but then you never hear from the brother ever again in the story, so it's kind of weird. Like, he was such an important part of her life and then he's just gone. I don't even know. I found her to be a really strong female character. Moving on to Prince Alec. Prince Alec is obviously a prince. His parents fall victim to the war. Because of their status, certain people decide to kill them as a way to start war. He begins to doubt his importance to the war in general and doesn't believe in his ability to lead. He is taken away during the middle of the night by his father's top mechanic and his fencing instructor, and they voyage away from Austria in order to protect him. Along the journey, he learns more about how to live, politics, who he is, and how to lead his country that's failing. So the story is a steampunk retelling of World War II. So in World War II, there were 2 sides. There was the Allies and the Axis. So within Westerfeld's retelling, the Allies are Darwinists and the Axis are clankers. And their names are really cool because they reference their methods of fighting. So the Darwinists utilize scientifically altered and created animals in order to fight. They use the animals' DNA, or threads of life as they call it, in order to create ships made of animals. They're giant floating ecosystems, which I thought was really, really cool and interesting. The Darwinists call these flying ecosystem creations beasts, or as Durin likes to call them, beasties. And the clankers fight with these like metal contraptions. They're kind of like giant walking robots. I don't really know how to describe them, but they call them walkers. On her first day of enlisting in the military, something happens to her and she ends up on board the Leviathan, which is the best beast ever created. It's the motherlode of beast. And while she's aboard the beast, she learns how to be a proper military man. She learns how to be a strong fighter, a pilot, all this stuff, and she really learns how hard it is to be a boy and how hard it is to be yourself when you're hiding yourself. But at the same time, being a boy is liberating because she can finally be herself, because as a girl she couldn't really be who she really was inside because people would judge her based on her sex, where even though she's hiding, being a boy is kind of liberating for her in that way. And Alec is running away from Austria, like I already said. During the time that he's running away, he learns to fight. He was always a really good fighter, but he learns more about fighting, and he learns how to fight utilizing the walker, because before he just fought like hand-to-hand combat with his fencing instructor, and now he knows how to use the walker, how to walk it, how to drive, and he quickly learns that he's a really talented driver for the walker, one of the best that they've seen. He can walk at night, which is something that's really hard, and he also learns a lot about politics and what his importance in the war is and how he can aid his country, and he learns how to be a leader and how to lead this team of misfits that are running away from their own country. He goes from being a privileged child to waking up as a fugitive orphan who is an heir to a failing country. Moving on to the aspects of this novel that made it great. First and foremost, the world building was so interesting. It was really unique. Right away, upon hearing the premise of the novel, I was hooked. I like history and I love stories with amazing world building, and he merged the two together so well. I love how Westerfeld took something that happened in our real world and made it happen in such a unique world, in such a unique way, that it still maintained the foundation of what our world is. The dialogue in this novel was great. Whether it was the banter between Alec and Volger or Alec and Durin, it was just perfect. The use of accented versus proper English was great. The inclusion of German and Latin was awesome. There was that mixture of different languages and different ways of using languages, the different class levels. So Durin, obviously as a commoner, spoke differently than Alec as a raised prince, and it just was great. I enjoyed this novel. It took me a long time to get through the beginning half just because it was so much world building and I couldn't wrap my head around most of it. It was so much mechanical talk and scientific talk, and normally I love scientific talk, but it was just so much that I'm like, okay, I get the point. Let's talk the ending now. I was like, it's over. I did it on my laptop and kept scrolling down to see if anything else would happen, and then I ran right into the afterword and I was like, what? It was just confusing. I didn't feel there was enough climax, and then it just kind of ended, but it didn't end really on a cliffhanger per se. Like, yes, there was a cliffhanger, but it wasn't an intense cliffhanger, and it was weird, and I didn't really see that as an ending. I don't even know. So I have to give this novel 3 out of 5 stars via Goodreads because it had a few cons for me. It took a long time for me to get into it. There was so much mechanical talk and so much world building that it was just so much. There wasn't enough suspense and action for me, and for a war story, that's kind of weird. But I really did love the characterization, and I thought the characters and the dialogue and the uniqueness of this novel really made it a good novel. So I'm going to give it the title of Readable. Just because I enjoyed reading it. It was a nice read, but I would not necessarily buy it, nor am I going to really ever reread it. And I'm going to move into the spoiler section now, so if you haven't read the book, go book yourself and come back when you've done so. Bye guys! You're here? Okay, let's chat. When Alec went to the marketplace for the first time and he saw all those people, and he realized that not everyone is literate, and not everyone speaks properly, and not everyone has a lot of money. It was a really big shock from going from being a privileged kid to seeing what is outside of his castle. Durin's commentary on the first time the Leviathan kills anyone was great. It really showed that she loves flying, but she doesn't like war, and she's a peaceful person, and she will sacrifice anything, including being in a military, even though she doesn't want to be in the military, just so that she can pursue her dreams of flying, and I thought that was great to her character. Durin's commentary on how hard it is to be a boy was just so good. It made me laugh, and it was just perfect. Here's a quote. "A bathtub might be nice," Alec said. "I believe we have one." Alec blinked. "Well, that's good news. Perhaps a few servants to heat the water?" Volger gestured at Boer, who was already chopping wood. "But you have us, your Serene Highness." "You're more like family than servants," Alec shrugged. "All the family I've got, in fact. You're still Habsburg. Don't forget that." That scene was so good because it really shows 3 things. 1, Alec believes these people are his family now, and that shows such growth, because in the beginning that was just his fencing master and just some mechanical guy. These were his people, these were his servants, and now these people are his heart and his strength and his family, and that's great. 2, it shows that these people still respect him even though his parents have died, and he's a child. They still call him Serene Highness, they still chop the wood, they still protect him, and that's great. They're still doing their duty to him. 3, that he's a Habsburg and he can't forget his importance. And Alec really struggles with that. Alec doesn't really believe he's that important, but really he is. He's key and central to this war. His feelings towards seeing the Leviathan for the first time was so perfect. It really showed his character. I mean, he sees this broken down ship and all these people and the bodies scattered, and his first thought is, these may be Darwinists, but I'm going to go help them. And he takes supplies that are supposed to be for him and his crew to help them survive, and he goes to bring it to these broken people who would shoot him down without even blinking. And then he gets there, and then Durin captures him, and I was so mad because he didn't think this through. He didn't go with a plan, and it really bothered me. So it shows how naive he is, because sometimes I feel like he was so grown up, and then sometimes I feel like he's just a child and he doesn't know what he's doing, and I just want to strangle him. The banter between Alex and Durin was great. It really was a great commentary on what happens when you take two people from two opposite countries that are completely different, and they critique each other's mannerisms and habits and strange manner of speaking, and at the same time learn and admire each other's differences from each other. That was great. I loved it. Just perfect. Dr. Barlow easily became one of my favorite characters. Everyone understands her genius and importance, and she carries herself with such elegance and confidence. She knows her shit, and she won't let anyone talk down to her. And especially since she's a woman, she has to fight for her place on the ship. And that is a great role model for Durin, who is hiding in this male's body. And just perfect. Here's a quote I found that I loved. Alec might have trained in combat and tactics his whole life, but Dylan was a real soldier. He swore with an effortless elegance, and during lunch had thrown a knife 3 meters and hit an apple square in its heart. He was skinnier than most boys his age, but could work alongside men and be treated as their equal. Even his lingering black eye from the crash had a political swagger to it. In a way, Dylan was the sort of boy Alec wanted to be if he hadn't been born the son of an archduke. I loved this quote because it really showcased two things. One, Alec can admire people who are supposed to be their enemy. And two, Durin makes a great boy. And not just being a boy, but she's the strength of a warrior, of a soldier, regardless of what sex she is. Being a soldier does not mean that you have to be a boy, and she's proving that, and I loved it. We're something different now, she said, a little of us and a little of them. I love this quote by Durin because it really showcased two things. One, of course, the obvious. The ship was now a hybrid of two things. It was a master ship now, and that's so cool. Two, she's not just talking about the ship, but she's talking about the people on the ship, and how these people are now not just clankers and Darwinists, but they're allies, they're something more, and that's just so good. I really liked how Westerfeld could say one thing and it could be taken in a literal context or more of a metaphorical meaning, and I just love that. But from what Vulgar's heard on the wireless, it'll only be a week or so, he smiled sadly. Funny, all these politicians trying to decide if we're enemies or not. That was such a good criticism because honestly, politics has such a great way of influencing people to believe propaganda and to believe that people are bad, that people are our enemies. Clankers may have done something to Darwinists, Darwinists may have done something to clankers, but Alec as a clanker and Durin as a Darwinist, they honestly had nothing against each other, and that was perfect. The end, as I said already, confused the hell out of me. It didn't hit me like this is the end. And all my thoughts on the novel. What were your thoughts? Did you think that the world building and retelling of World War II was unique and interesting like I did? Or did you think it was just painful? Did you think it was hard to get through kind of like I did? Or leave me a comment and make sure to let me know what I should read and review next. And I'll see you guys soon. Next time, Candice from the Bookends. Goodbye, book nerds.